Hey guys, this is Ben Schwartz with Tapping Into the Zone, and I'd like to explain a little bit about trauma. We hear the term trauma a lot these days. It's become very popular in psychology and pop psychology and self-help circles because really it's only in the last 10 or 15 years that trauma has even been on the map in terms of a priority in mental health. But there's still a lot of misconceptions, even though it's become such a popular topic. A lot of people don't relate to trauma because they don't really think that they have had trauma in their life. I hear people all the time when I ask them if they have trauma in their history, they'll say, yeah, no, I haven't had any abuse. My parents, had a pretty decent marriage. I had a good, loving family. I haven't had any major, car accidents or anything like that. And so they just sort of discount the idea of having any kind of trauma that would affect them. I'd like to just expand the view of what we sometimes refer to as trauma, just because it's a useful concept as a way to work on the root stuff, the root cause of difficulties in your life, of patterns, of what we would think of as negative conditioning, right? So think of it this way. Everything that happens to you, especially early in life, particularly in the first 20 years of life, and even more so in the first 7 years or so of life, everything that happens in that period of time is very deeply imprinted. Much more imprinted in your consciousness than at later times in life. So anything that you experience in early life, even things that you've forgotten, that you don't consciously remember, those things have a lasting effect for most people, particularly if the events that happened involved very intense emotion, particularly fear, or a threat to your well-being. It doesn't have to just be physical threat to your physical safety. It can be an emotional threat, a threat to your integrity as a human being, your dignity, your personal space, your sexual safety, boundaries crossed in a lot of different ways, not only physically harming somebody or assaulting somebody physically, but even just the threat of that can be very traumatic and can last a lifetime. And so, there's a lot of different things that can fit this category that you may not attach the label of trauma to. So I just want to offer that as a way to expand your view of this term trauma, because that gives it more utility to understand that what happens to you early in life that imprints in your nervous system, let's say something happens that creates a very strong fear response, and it's a situation that either you were triggered into a fight or flight state where you had to run away or fight to protect yourself, or you had those impulses in you but instead you froze, which is another instinctive biological response under threat, to just freeze, deer in the headlights, unable to move, which is where a lot of victimization actually happens, and it's not your fault. It's a biological response for survival. That stays in your system. That's an unfinished experience. And so all the energies that weren't expressed in those moments stay in your system and potentially, very likely, create patterns and problems later in life that you may not even connect to the original event. And this is what we approach with all different sorts of somatic and energetic approaches like EFT, also known as tapping. Breath work also can reach these places. Psychedelic therapy can reach these levels of some subconscious patterning and trauma release. And if you're not involving the body in the process, it's very difficult to get complete resolution on these things, because it is not just a mental experience, it's it's also a physical one. It's physical, it's energetic, it's in your nervous system. It's a whole mind-body experience. And so you need to have a key to unlock that level of your human design in order to really finish this stuff and reset your system to give yourself the freedom from those old patterns of fear, of trauma. Stay tuned. I'll be talking lots more about trauma and all these different ways and these different modalities of working with what's holding you back from your fullest potential. Thanks for tuning in. This is Ben Schwartz with Tapping into the Zone. See you next time.